Hi, I'm Rex, and I want to touch upon the connection between gravity, dark energy, the expanding universe, and the multi-universal existence. Gravity is basically a highly malleable framework that is fundamental to the entirety of this existence. It allows for the chemical processes to take place that ultimately gives rise to something like a universe and everything that it contains. I believe the reason it doesn't fit into the theory of everything, the theory that physicists are looking to create an equation that embodies the four fundamental forces of the universe, or that which is believed to be the four fundamental forces, that of the strong and weak nuclear force, electromagnetism, and gravity. But gravity has not been fitting in. So my suggestion is this. Gravity is not so much fundamental to the universe per se as it is fundamental to this multi-universal existence. Which means gravity exists beyond the birth of the universe and the death of the universe. And gravity is key to everything. So yes, gravity is dark energy. But no, this is not anti-gravity, and this is not reverse gravity. Gravity is much bigger than that. Gravity exists throughout the vast expanses that may exist between universes, that which cosmologists refer to as the bulk or hyperspace. Gravity is doing its thing. Much like an incredibly vast ocean, with all these dynamic currents and waves and all these processes taking place from the most subatomic level to the most macro. We're going to discover gravitational currents in addition to gravitational waves. To better understand gravity, I feel we have to think of it in terms of a liquid, like water, especially with respect to the way it moves. I would suggest that we're going to find gravity waves in our own solar system, and even here on Earth. I think not unlike being in the middle of, say, the Pacific Ocean, you'd be looking around you and be potentially in the middle of these giant swells, these big, huge sections of water that are moving. Basically, if you're sitting in the middle of the ocean, you'd be moving up and down. But if you look at those swells, you'll see waves in those swells. And if you look really closely, you'll see waves, ripples of water in the waves in the swells. The point is, there's a lot of dynamics that are going on to a very detailed level. Now, gravity, I would suggest, is even more detailed because the waves, these ripples, are going to go all the way into the quantum level of reality. Now, when you're looking at gravity on this level, now gravity is working with potential superheated, ultra tiny, primordial particle. To me, probably nothing greater than that of an electron or some form of fundamental particle. So think in terms of this ultra tiny particle with the information of an entire universe contained within. And that's incredibly, incredibly dense. It's also going to be incredibly hot and incredibly energetic. Gravity is going to be incredibly concentrated. And it's this mixture of all of this energy and the dynamics and the pressures of gravity that drive this particle to begin to expand. Because just the heat and the pressure just becomes so great, there's just nowhere to go but out. Eventually it grows to a point, well, as per the Big Bang and cosmic inflation. Now, I'm not necessarily saying I'm going to support either of these theories in their entirety, but I think there are aspects of these theories that, for me, resonate. And this is an area where it does resonate for me. So as this slowly expanding universe is cooling down and the chemical processes are underway, in other words, the first atomic formations are happening, giving way to the first molecular formations, and eventually on up into creating new stars, and potentially galaxies, and that first stage of universal development as the universe grew beyond the initial expansion. Now, during the course of this expansion, the universe is basically pushing against the pressure of gravity, sort of despite itself. But as the universe expands, even in this very early expansion, and while no doubt it was extremely, extremely dense still, it was much less dense than it was as the original particle. So gravity is already weakening. So energy is starting to leave this embodiment. Now, a very short version of this is, trying to keep this video as short as possible. So with galactic formation and star formation taking place, eventually the first cracks of space begin to show in the universe. And this is a point with which, somewhere in there, the universe goes from fighting against gravity to expand, and now kind of working against gravity not to expand too fast. Because as the cracks get bigger, the more gravity moves away. Think of it in terms of holes in a bucket. Okay, you're filling a bucket full of water, cut some holes in it, and the water is going to start leaking out of those holes, correct? Now cut those holes bigger, maybe cut a few more holes in addition to the original holes that were there. Water's going to rush out even faster and with more force. Now if the holes continue to get bigger, water's going to continue to rush out even faster, and the force of that water is going to continue to increase. So as the universe expands, gravity is basically doing this very same thing. Now, in so doing, mind you, don't forget, we're talking about hyperspace here, this multi-universal existence. So if gravity is rushing away, presumably it's rushing towards other gravitationally dense objects, such as a primordial particle getting ready to give birth to a universe. If the universe is in fact expanding, and it's expanding at an ever-increasing rate, what I'm suggesting here could very well explain that. I think black holes play a key role in the seeding processes of potential universal births. I feel like there is a fundamental sized particle at the heart of a black hole. All of this information that's rushing into these black holes is being crammed down into this ultra tiny space. And the singularity, of course, is already no doubt incredibly dense and just going to become exponentially more so. Gravity and water, where it is similar, is in this movement of how, on the one hand, it can be moving one direction and then at the same time moving a different direction. Because naturally, while gravity is rushing away, you wonder, well, if that's true, then why is there still gravity, binding stars and solar systems and galaxies and so on? Well, because those are still gravitationally attractive and is still drawing in a certain amount of that gravity, even against the gravity rushing away. But also think of it like water lapping up onto a beach. And perhaps you've got waves crashing into shore, 5-6 foot waves, whatever. But the point is, if you watch them, you can see water rushing up the beach, and at the same time water rushing down the beach, sometimes right in the exact same space. Water also tends to never move the same way twice. Now think about if you have a cake pan, rectangular cake pan, and you just fill it with about, an inch of water, and put it into a machine that just rocks it back and forth, slow enough to just get the water moving. But this machine's doing it at the exact same tempo, in the exact same amount of movement. If you let that go for an hour, the water's going to obviously be sloshing back and forth in the pan. But water's going to be constantly mixing and remixing itself every time it moves back and forth. It's not going to do it the same way twice. Gravity works a lot like this. The gravity in relation to these galaxies and stars, again, that's going to diminish. It's going to continue rushing away, moving towards other gravitationally attractive objects, mainly that of other singularities. Now, gravity is moving in all of these multi-universal directions. You can think of the complexities of the way gravity moves. So if we're thinking in terms of gravity moving like water, imagine this like being an enormously vast ocean of multi-universal existence. And gravitational energy is moving, ebbing, flowing, bending, twisting, all over the place. Now we start talking about a multi-universal existence. In this context, we're just talking about one type of potential extra universe. We're talking about universes that bear similarity to our own. Now, regarding the unified field and gravity, if gravity exists on this multi-universal existence and is fundamental to this existence, it too has to be fundamental to the unified existence, that of the unified field. It's gravity that basically gives form and function, if you will, to the unified field, to this field of reality where every experience possible is existing simultaneously at once. Basically, think about it like this. Gravity is a sculptor, and the entirety of this experiential, multi-universal reality is the clay. It is perhaps the most fundamental of all forces. Without gravity, nothing exists. Certainly nothing as we know it. As always, just throwing out some food for thought, just some things that are fun to think about. Thank you so much for taking some time. I wish you all the best. Lots of love. Peace.